The world of woodworking is filled with thousands of different router bit profiles. More and more are being added all the time. That's a good thing because it lets you do all kinds of great work with routers, but it's a bad thing because it can make for some pretty hard choices sometimes. I'm Steve Maxwell, cabinet maker and woodworking journalist, and I want to give you a tour of 3 different router bit profiles. I want to show you why I like them and how you can make good things happen in your workshop using the same thing. The first thing you need to understand about these 3 profiles that I'm going to talk to you about is that they're not all that common. You won't usually find them on store shelves or in router bit collections. Bullnose router bits are really one of my favorites because they're so versatile. You can use them to make large, wide trim elements for full-size projects, or small details that really make the difference in tinier projects or built-in architectural details. It gets its name from the semicircular profile of the cutter, and most models have a bearing on the top, although that doesn't usually enter into the use of the bit very often. Large bullnose bits like you see here are almost always used in a router table with the bearing flush with the fence. That keeps the wood back just the right amount from the bit so it produces that full semicircular profile we're after. You can adjust the fence with a straight edge like this, put it against the fence surface, and move the fence back and forth until the bearing just touches the straight edge as it slides back and forth. The next kind of bit I want to tell you about is the chamfer bit, 45-degree chamfer bit, which might not seem very fancy until you realize how versatile a bit this is. Regular ones of this size I often use in small handheld routers like this to put really tiny chamfers on otherwise square-edged projects. It makes it look crisp and neat and helps those edges to withstand bumps and bangs better. At the other end of the spectrum, you have really large chamfer bits. Many of them are over 2 inches in diameter. They're great for outdoor projects where you want to take ordinary beams and planks and give them an edge that looks super attractive. The key there is to start and stop the chamfer profile before you get to the ends of the beams that you're routing. That makes it look really great. The third kind of bit I want to recommend to you has the most variety out of the ones we've talked about. It's called the flush trim bit. It gets its name because the bearing is the same diameter as the cutters. This allows the bearing to travel around the outside of a pattern, cutting away any excess material from the wood underneath. There are 3 main kinds of flush trim bits. The most common has the bearing on the end of the bit like this. This is perfect for use in a router table where the bit sticks up above the table and you're following a pattern around the top of a workpiece. If you happen to be plunging the router bit into a workpiece to create mortises, for instance, you'd want to have the bearing on the shaft, like this little bit here, or like this monster bit here. These are designed to be used mostly with the router freehand, plunging down into the work and following the pattern with the bearing like this. Now there are situations where it's handy to have bearings on both ends of the bit. That allows you to route a pattern around a piece of wood, and then when you encounter some grain running the opposite direction, you can flip that workpiece over so the pattern is now underneath, following the bearing that's on the shaft. It allows you to always cut in the direction of wood grain so you get smooth, consistent results. There are other variations on the flush trim bit theme, like this little bit here. It's entirely carbide. It doesn't just have carbide cutters, but the whole cutting tip is carbide. The cutting edges are sharply angled to create a downward shearing action that cuts very smoothly through veneered plywood, and the bearing is also on the shaft. This bit is perfect for milling dados and rabbets, following patterns or jigs when you're making bookshelves and cabinets, and any projects that have a groove in the middle or along the edge of one of the large parts. There's certainly more to router bits than the 3 families of profiles I've introduced you to here, but I know from experience in my own shop that these router bits make a big difference. They allow a lot of creativity, and I'm sure if you give them a try in your own work, you'll be very happy.